Unspoiled Network podcast.
This is Spoil Me, covering What We Do in the Shadows, Season 5, Episode 5, Local News. In this episode, this is one of the more horribly frustrating episodes of this show ever, I think. Oh, I hate this kind of thing. It was really well done, but anxiety humor kills my spirit. Welcome to Spoil Me. Welcome to the show, everyone. I am Natasha. Thank you very much to Max for commissioning this episode. So this, when I say anxiety humor, I'm sure you guys generally get the gist. Anytime where the primary humor in a scene is coming from feeling like, oh God, no. Oh God. Oh, that's so embarrassing. Or that's something that if anybody finds out, and they're definitely going to find out. And sometimes that sort of thing, you can still do it, but make anxiety the secondary part of it. For example, when you're going, oh no, because somebody screwed something up, but the way they screwed it up was a spectacular pratfall where they go face first into a wedding cake. So then it becomes the physical comedy is really where the humor is coming from, less so the fact that something went wrong. And so that's why I tend to, in those sorts of stories, the broad comedy thing a bit better, because when it is something like this, and what I'm talking about here is much less the vampires and almost all Guillermo's story. What we have with him is everybody's mad at him. I expressly go through life trying to make sure that as few IRL people are mad at me as possible. So anytime the story is that a person is making everyone around them feel angry or unappreciated or ignored, and it's offending them in a understandable and genuine way, that's my worst nightmare, to feel like I have done that to somebody. I hate it. And watching it play out for humor, it hurts. I can't find it funny. So I'm going to go through everything with Guillermo in one shot, Band-Aid off, get it done. And then we can just talk about the fucking much more pratfall-esque comedy of the vampires. So Guillermo comes to say goodbye to his mother. Then we get, at the very end, this amazing moment where she is describing to it's his cousin, I think, that Guillermo comes he's already been here 3 times this month or this week even to say goodbye, and saying that he's not going to be able to see her again. And then he just comes back and tells her again. And I know the joke is really that he did this because he didn't know when the whole goodbye, when would his vampirism really come to the fore to the point where he can't come visit her. Well, better get it done. Say our goodbye now. And then he finds out he's got a little more time, and he figures, well, what the hell? I'll say goodbye once more. I have all this extra time. It doesn't seem like she's in any danger. It'll be the last time I get to say it. Now he's on time number 3. And there is something about knowing that if he ever did fully turn to the point where he can't safely be around her, what would she think about the fact that he finally did stop showing up? And would it fuck with their last goodbye? Because she treats this one she tries to be you can tell she's like attempting to humor him. And she has mentioned earlier in the episode how dramatic he is. And now it really makes a lot more sense. At first I was a little bit, that's a little snotty. Like, she's not wrong. He is dramatic, but, you know, come on. Although if our mom isn't allowed to say that kind of shit about us, then who is, I guess. But it's, you know, knowing now that he has like done this fucking farewell forever, mother, for the last time in his head, but she has seen this already 3 times and he just never is actually gone. She has to really try to take it seriously for his sake, but she doesn't believe it. So she's not giving him her full attention or the gravity that like this sort of moment should really get, you know? And I feel like I can't tell if he notices or not. I don't think he does. Guillermo actually is incredibly self-centered. And I'm really beginning to like understand this about him because so much of what he does is geared towards like waiting on Nandor and being there to do any little thing they command him to do, all of the like, you know, grunt gross work. He is portrayed as so helpful and constantly available that I think of him as somebody who's like that as a person. And I keep forgetting they are the vessels through which he can achieve eternal life. And so to him, of course he's going to be like constantly aware of what they need. It's ultimately like very self-serving what he's doing. And also he has this like God complex with them. Well, he did. I don't feel like he does anymore. But the way that we have seen things with his family and how little he is around and the way that like they clearly come first and are his primary concern. This whole episode is about how this is a goodbye to his mother. And he spends 80% of it watching the news or on his phone trying to get a hold of them. If he gave a shit about saying goodbye, he wouldn't pay that any mind. He would be like, this is what they always get through shit. I'm just going to leave it alone. It's none of my business. This is going to be potentially the last time I can ever talk to her. And the only thing that I can assume from the fact that he doesn't pay nearly the attention he should to this momentous like situation is that either he doesn't really care about his family very much and he's not that sorry, or he has grown himself a little tired of these dramatic goodbyes. And so it's not hitting for him either because he's done it too many times. Or, and this is an interesting option, he doesn't really like care about his family and he wants the drama of it more than he feels like, oh, I have to do this to make it look good or this is my duty or anything. I think like he craves the drama of it. And that would explain why he like breaks down in the elevator the way that he does. You haven't seemed to give a shit. They've been sitting right in front of you and you've utterly ignored them. And then you're leaving and you're breaking into tears. I just have to put that down to drama queen. And, you know, that it's always just like what it turns out it is too. It's his mother's birthday. You know, talk about like perfect goodbye days that you should be very hyper aware of. You are showing up at her the final birthday of hers that you will ever get to go to. And I look like as he's walking to the door, he says most people don't think they'll ever have to say goodbye to their mothers forever, which is like such dark humor, you guys, because that's literally like we all, if we have mothers, know that, yeah, that will come someday. And again, the fact that he is so unaware of anybody else's situation and how wrong he is in this statement, it's just more evidence he is actually like very obsessed with himself. And I should have known that, you know, like from the start. He's been out here burying bodies, helping lure young virgins into the house to be murdered, and he hasn't thought a thing of it. So I really should be aware of the fact that, like, Guillermo is self-absorbed and self-serving and actually not, like, a good guy. But it's so easy because he is the softie in the midst of all of these maniacs who has very little power most of the time. And we see him getting kicked around. And it's just really easy to, like, lose sight of the fact that, okay, he may be pitiful like Wormtail, but ultimately you're one of them, you know? So suffice to say, what I have described is really most of his deal. He, you know, tells us it's the last time as they get into the apartment, finds out that it's his mom's birthday and that he forgot to bring a gift. And really what he should have done at that point is turn around and leave once again. Like, how are you going to miss the opportunity to give her a gift for the last time for her birthday? But he decides to stick around and I guess just hope nobody notices, even though his cousin is very, like, obviously giving him a stink eye over it. And I can't remember what his cousin's name is. I'm sorry, guys. I'm going to jump ahead to that part in the episode and see if I can catch them saying it. But throughout the evening, like, he spots the news and he just can't stop tuning in, attempting to call. So he's basically just got his phone in his hand and is pressing redial, like, continuously until eventually somebody picks up. And he is not noticing any of the conversation that's going on around him. Everybody is, like, frustrated because they're telling stories and he isn't, like, even clocking that there's something else happening. And then his cousin starts to get on his case about it and mentions it, like, several times. That, you are really too glued to your phone. It's the screens. Miguel, that's him, Miguel. And ordinarily, when you have, like, a character like this where there's a family dinner and there's one person that keeps harping on another person, ordinarily that kind of thing I really don't like because it makes them just seem like a bully. And Miguel is definitely, like, a little bit of a bully, but I feel like in this case, it's sort of a bully for a good cause, where he is just like, dude, it's your mother's birthday. How am I over here doing more than you? Pay the fuck attention. What is wrong with you? You know? And I really, normally this sort of thing, I'm just like, shut the fuck, just leave him alone. Because you tend in these sorts of this comedy where it's like anxiety, you tend to be on the side of the person who's like the main character, even if you kind of know what they're doing is wrong or that they are up to something that's fucked up. You're just instinct when they have been the center of your attention is to side with them and kind of want to see them succeed. And so I just really would have thought I'd get more annoyed with Miguel, but instead I'm just so pissed at him. This, you know what this actually makes me think of is this is like an episode of Seinfeld, because Seinfeld is the same way where the characters are like getting criticized for things and they're getting a lot of shit, but you know that in actuality, they're pretty much worse than everybody even knows. And so there's this like, this sense of justice when somebody finally says something to them. And when they wind up having lost at the end of the episode, you can't even really feel that bad for them. You're just kind of like, yeah, well, that's probably what you deserved, my friend. I wish that I could remember, because there's a point where Guillermo has called him over to the table and looks horrified that Guillermo has just gotten on the phone. And he says Mimo, and Guillermo starts to sing a song in Spanish, and it's a play on the word Mimo, I think. And I can't remember what it was. When he started to sing, I was like, oh my God, I know that song. It's just one of those kind of like, I don't know if it's a cumbia or salsa technically, but it's one of those that's like just a bit of a folk song that you hear a lot. And I recognized it and I was like, oh my God, I can't believe I actually know what he's singing. And now it's like, literally on Hulu, the subtitles just says Guillermo sings in Spanish, which is so sad. Hold on. I'm going to just play it out loud here. Apúrate. No te metas to mi cuckoo. Don't call me crazy. Right? I think, but I may be getting that translation wrong. And the one I remember was like a duet. I think that's the one that you hear the most often, recorded in like, the 60s or 70s or something. But anyway, I just really liked that bit because I actually like knew what he was referring to. It's just one of those things, you guys, that I have such a sensitive relationship with the Hispanic side of myself that anytime I actually get it, I'm very excited because I'm like, finally I get something. I can connect with something. But there's precious little of it out there. So all of this ends with eventually, after this like drawn out phone call and constantly obsessing, he goes back and his mother is very irritated, obviously, taking off her jewelry and sitting on her bed. And he's like, where'd everybody go? And she's like, the party is over. Miguel is fucking cleaning up, dude. It's done. And she just obviously is unimpressed with him. And he has to do his whole thing. And she just has a really good reaction to it, honestly, where she just, and it makes sense. If she's done this 3 times, she's going to have like perfected the response she has. So what she says is just basically, well, if it's what makes you happy, then you do what you need to do, just like follow your dreams. And he really takes that to heart. And I just could not, when she finally explains that he's done this so many times, that is so embarrassing. Guillermo, come on, man. Have some dignity, dude. You just don't. Like, oh my God, it sucks. Ugh. I can't even like take satisfaction. And by the way, she gives him a cross and that shit burns him. So he's like transforming enough that that's beginning to have an effect. He has to put the cross like on the outside of his collar. And I was watching that and I was seeing her like looking at his reflection in the mirror. And I know, and anybody else who has ever been in this position knows, there is 0% chance she didn't fix that and put the cross right against his skin. And it's interesting that, all of his family are like vampire killers, but did not pick up on what was going on with him. Now, everybody does seem vaguely annoyed, and that could just be his behavior, because that would be completely valid. But it would be kind of funny if there was just an edge to it, because they can sense a little vampire thing going on and they don't know why, but it's like getting their fucking dander up. You know what I'm saying? But there's no further progression visibly. And it doesn't seem like anything else that episode is, he ate a traditional Mexican meal, like there's tamales and stuff. There is a lot of garlic in that. And apparently, no problem. And lucky you, because I know the point of being a vampire is that you don't have to eat anymore. And probably food isn't even that appealing to you. But just the idea that you could just never taste garlic again, that's horrifying to me. I know I spent time talking about the garlic thing in another episode. I'm sorry to keep hammering on it, but you guys, I wonder too, because like different lores have a different sort of reaction to vamps eating. Like in Twilight, Edward hates it. It like doesn't taste good anymore. Swallowing is horrible. But obviously in this show, we have seen Nadja and the Baron like eat something because they wanted to taste it. And she threw up, but she said it was worth it. And that it was like, I think she said something like, those are almost as good as the ones from my home or something. So she clearly can enjoy it, even if she doesn't actually enjoy it fully. And I like that might be a deal breaker for me. The idea that like the joy that I get from food would simply stop. And I know you would, I guess, get the same joy from blood. But that's so like one note to me. I guess like the point is it's not, everybody tastes different. But because like in Sookie Stackhouse, all the blood types are specified when you buy blood. So you can choose like O positive if that's the one you like the taste of. And different people, of course, based on things that they've drunk and eaten. So maybe it would still be like pretty dope. But I just can't imagine giving up the array of food for one substance forever. That sucks. Get it? Anyway, so then he finally leaves and we find out and he's sobbing on the fucking elevator. And on the way down, he like yanks the banister of the elevator right off by accident. And the dude who gets in the elevator just gives him a really weird look as he says, like, it was like that when I got here, but then you should just put it on the floor, dude. Just put it down. Don't hold it like a staff, like you're about to like, you know, get in some kind of physical fight with somebody. So, okay, then now let's back it up to the very beginning of the episode. We start off with the news coverage of a water main breaking. And y'all, I absolutely love any jokes about local news. I find them really fun, especially because nowadays I don't really watch local news ever anymore, right? I don't think it's that much of a thing. Most people, if they ever do watch it, they'll watch it online. They'll watch clips. They won't even watch the whole show. It tends to be a lot of older people, especially for morning shows when like you have something on while you're just getting ready for work type thing. And so I have this like image in my head of what local news was like, frozen in my head. And anytime that I see the jokes, they very much match up with what's frozen in my head. And that leads me to believe that like very little has actually changed. I am very much more willing to believe local news has stayed pretty much the same in overall vibe than that everybody else who writes these jokes has stopped watching it and they're only writing from what they knew in the 90s. And the thing about local news is that it's this really like wild combo. It's supposed to be strictly local. They'll always still touch on international events, but it's always a completely different tone, right? And again, speaking from memory, not recently. I don't know how they do this stuff now. But the local stuff is often like very trivial and sort of silly, and it has to be treated with this like earnestness. And it can be very goofy to watch them attempt this somber attitude about something that's sort of not really that big a deal, like this burger place is closing after all these years, you know? And it's like, everybody's like, yeah, and the guy's a racist, whatever, fine, close it. But then there's times where they have like their high season, and that usually is when there's like a weather emergency. And so the weather guy will be a star for a little while, and all the stories will be about how people are preparing for the storm, how the fucking grocery stores have been looted and there's fighting in the streets and everybody nail your window shut. And that will be like the 24-hour news cycle for a little while until shit begins to happen, at which point they always have to make it seem like worse than it is because that's the drama. They have to do the drama. And I remember as a little kid when I was in Connecticut and they were predicting this nor'easter, and my mother was like much more practical and kind of knew this isn't going to be that big deal. But my grandmother, she is a gardener and she lives on the coast, and she was the drama queen, like for real. And so anytime that there was a prediction of a storm, it was like the earth was ending. And she would glue herself to that TV and talk about nothing but all the preparations that she was making. And this nor'easter, she was obsessed. It was like 3 full days of them talking about it. Meanwhile, every time they talk about it, the vibe is off. Like, it's clear it's slowing down. It's not going to hit us the way they thought. It's not going to be as hard as they thought. And then finally it hit. and it was barely a storm by the time it got to us. And I will never forget this dude standing on the beach in front of the most calm, lapping gently ocean you've ever seen. And they're like, how's it going on the beach down there, Jim? And he says, well, Tom, the best word is ominous. And he was trying so hard, you guys, to make something out of this. Nothing is going on. And he was so deadpan and serious. And it's like, we can see, Jim, right behind you, there's nothing going on. Bruh, I know this sucks, but come on. And I gotta say, probably my grandmother ate that shit up. But anyway, so that's like what I remember is the attempts to like make things into more drama than they are. So that was the only thing about this episode that I felt like it was almost missing a beat for me, because I wanted them to zero in on this a lot even more than they were and make a bigger deal out of it than they were. But they mostly hit like the exact right notes in the meaningless crosstalk conversations, the questions that are just like so obvious and pointless. And I am always a fan of the like man on the street interviews and like sharing best ofs from those, because you will get some real characters in those. You'll sometimes get people that are straight up weirdos. You'll get folks who are very funny. Or you'll get somebody who's just like dead weight and you're like, you can clearly see the anchor's like, why did I have to stop this guy? Jesus Christ. And so what we've started with is this broken water main, and Nandor, who is giving this like excited interview about seeing it happen, and all of this camera footage, it's like going to the water spray up against this window because the water main's on the ground, right? So it's like a sinkhole, I guess, that caused this. And so it's pouring all over the power lines and has knocked things down. And he's just talking about how he went for his evening walk for his mental health, and then suddenly crash burst. And then water, it shoots into the air and then like all over the street. And she says, have you ever seen anything like this before? And he says, not since the Great Flood in 1892. That was a big boy. Which I actually went and like looked up some of that, and I've already mostly forgotten what it was. But I believe it was something like a glacier or something began to like melt, and it was like a combination of that and like a dam that was in place that was not holding up. And yeah, it basically like poured down the river and completely like flooded Manhattan and stuff. And it was hard to find a map. I was trying to find like one that really outlined which areas got. But anyway, he says this, and like, obviously you could say, oh, he fucked up, it's a giveaway. But it's so clear. She just does not think about it. Like, she makes a joke. She's not at all suspicious that this is... She just assumes it's a mistake. He misspoke, that's all. And Nandor, in his true fashion, instead of seeing the tone that this is being handled with and just rolling and being like, yeah, me... he has to fucking try to correct it in the most suspicious way possible. 1992. I said 1892, but no, I meant 1992 because that was not a year that I was alive for in my, human lifespan, but 1992 most definitely was. So, yeah, it was 1992 then, although I have been living in Staten Island for many centuries. And again, stops dead as he's realized what he's done. And at this point, you've drawn attention to it. So she can't just let it go that you just said many centuries. You have to, again, now she has to mention it, his great skincare routine and the secret to eternal life. And she has to sort of he literally turns and scampers away. And she has to do what she can with that weird ass interview, assure them I will be right here on the ground for whatever you need, as we see this just like spray of water going up behind her. And what I want for this weird bit with Nandor to go viral, and for there to be a person sharing the clip of him saying he's lived here for many centuries, and there to just be a tiny group of obsessed fans who are like conspiracy theorists to give this interview way more credence than everybody else. Anyone else is thinking it's just a joke, he misspoke, or he was just playing a bit, for the camera for that. And they'll all just write it off, and then there's going to be like this little pocket, sort of like the mosquito people, who all decide, oh, no, that was for real. Maybe not vampire, but they're definitely like something's up with that guy. And it becomes, even though they think it's a solved problem by the end of the episode, it turns out like it's not. But anyway, so he sprints home chanting shitty shit, I fucked it, shit, I fucked it. He goes running into the house, and he is looking for Guillermo because he doesn't know what to do. And he has Colin turn on Channel 5 and tells them all the truth about the interview. And again, if they actually watched the way this went down, I don't know if they would have believed that he fucked it up either. The way that he presents what he said, because they don't actually see it. He says, I accidentally told Joanna Roscoe that we have lived in this street for many centuries. And so now she and all of the viewers on Channel 8 News live at 7 know that we are vampires. And now all of we humans are going to all of the humans are going to drive us out of Staten Island as they did from the old country. That's Nadja. So he presents it very much like, I said a thing and now they all know. When we know that's not at all what happened. He thinks he fucked up much more than he really did. It would be harder to get somebody to believe you were a vampire than you know what I mean? But they don't actually see the interview. They just hear his saying it this way to them. And I can't decide if they would have watched it. Would they have drawn the same conclusion as him? Are they all as paranoid in this way where they don't read people all that well? Because it just feels like Nandor usually doesn't have great judgment, and he does tend to be the dumbass out of all of them. Not that they aren't all dumbasses in their own very special and unique ways, but he really is the lowest tier. And I kind of think probably at least Colin Robinson would be like, she's not, dude, did you see the way she reacted? She does not believe you. It's fine. I love the way that Colin Robinson decides to go absolutely bonkers. He loses his entire mind. And he just starts punching holes in the wall, knocking furniture over. He just reaches up and pulls down a wall clock for no reason. And a part of me thought, are you just feeding into this because you're sort of feeding off of this? Is the upset energy in the air a tasty treat? And so you just want them all to be more worried than they are? But it seems for the rest of the episode that he is dead serious. It's not, there's never a sort of wink at the camera, So what we get then is everybody figuring out how to handle what's happened. Nadja has dyed her hair blonde. Honestly, the bitch looks good as a blonde. I prefer her dark hair, but she could pull that off. That was pretty good. And she is saying that, we all know as vampires, this jig will be up eventually. People will notice it's the same folks living here. And we're going to have to blow the popsicle stand. So, given that we are all aware of this, we have go bags. We are prepared. We know, the routine. And I have to assume in today's world, moving it has to happen even more often. You know, there's just more people to notice. People, like, areas are more tightly populated. And to a degree, that can make you disappear. But with social media, it's very easy to pull things up now that should be old enough at this point to really show age, like, and time has passed. You know, if they, for example, our friends here, you know, they are presenting in their, like, mid to late 30s, maybe their early 40s. And if you are that old, there will be documents of you from a younger age accessible on the internet. It's just going to be out there. So I have to assume, like I said, that if anything, the amount of time that they have lived here, that's a pretty good record. They have been, what is it, this neighborhood Nandor says, for like many centuries? And I think it's approaching the time where people are going to begin to be like, oh, that guy, I feel like I've seen him around. God, he looks the same, you know? But anyway, so yeah, her whole thing is like, I've been chased out of places all over, and you really don't want to be going out there with only the clothes on your back. And I love this, like, the way that they do, like, the classical paintings, but they, like, change the faces and the context and everything. So yeah, she's got the go bangs. She's changed her hair. She is ready to go. Laszlo, on the other hand, initially his plan is, well, we have to kill Joanna Robinson, which is the name of the anchor. And rightfully so, everybody's like, what the fuck would that do? Because the whole point is that this was transmitted live to, you know, thousands of viewers, presumably. And then he amends this to, we're going to kidnap Joanna Robinson. And when she says, what good will that do? He says, it takes us to step 2. And she just ignores him, which is right. You know, it turns out, like, a couple people ask him, and he doesn't even really have a step 2. I don't think ever do we hear anything like a step 2. And we never actually get to one because the car finds, you know, they get fucked up and they don't go through with the thing. But it really was like, I kept waiting for it, thinking that, oh, it's going to be really wild. And the joke is that you just never find out, which I like. And meanwhile, in the background, as he's saying, like, that brings us to step 2, Colin Robinson is walking by doing that thing where you, like, hold up a lighter and you spray a can of hairspray behind it so that it's like a flamethrower. And I will tell you what, everybody, that as just some background business is fucking hysterical. He's not doing anything, you know, like, what is that? I don't, like, maybe it's supposed to be that he's burning away cobwebs or something, because he's putting in place all of these, like, booby traps and weird, like, trick door stuff. And maybe he's like, okay, gotta clear the space because I'm about to go to work in here, you know? But it just looks like him doing something fucking nuts for the sake of making everybody around him panic as much as they can. And yeah, as he's doing all of this, Nadja is practicing her new identity, Sally Rhubarb. I am a blonde girl from a large farm, and my blackberry pie wins every year at the county fair. And she's about to sit on the bench, and Colin says, don't sit there. And she says, why not? And he tosses her bag onto it. And a fucking spear comes out from the seat of the chair upwards that would have impaled her up the ass. And she's like, what the fuck? And he's like, this is our last stand. The whole house is booby trapped. And she's like, why is anybody going to attack us and then just go sit on the fucking bench? Who's doing that? It's not going to do. What are you doing? And I was very excited when I saw all of this getting set up because I was like, oh, we're going to get a pretty good payoff where there's going to be all kinds of like weird booby traps going off. And the whole episode goes by and we don't get it. And I was like, that's very surprising. But then you get the post-credits thing with Guillermo just like falling down the hall in a really good bit of like physical comedy. And I'm assuming a lot of that stuff is put in post. So it's just like CGI, but it's like fun to watch. I thought it was quite well done. So yeah, they all have their different methods by which they want to do things. Nadja wants to run. Laszlo wants to fight back. But like in a sneaky one-on-one sort of way that's indeterminate. And Colin Robinson is just planning for a fucking flat out battle. Meanwhile, in the background, we also have like evil Mabel who is practicing her fencing. And she finally says, I'm going to run, like, why don't we run together? And the way in which Nadja is like, we? Oh, cool. Oh my God. I feel so bad for evil Mabel. I like you, evil Mabel. Come hang out with me. I'll be your friend, you bloodthirsty slut. But no, it's just these like ungrateful assholes. I feel so bad. I just want her to be able to have friends. She's never done anything wrong. She's just a weirdo, and they're all fucking weirdos. So who gets to say anything about that? I love the fact that there is one bit with a cinder block that crashes down and hits Nandor and breaks. I forgot about that. He attempts to go on the evening news and mesmerize everybody to forget what they saw, but he's in the middle of his weird approach of the camera when they cut away because there's some other like emergency weather thing happening. And it could be that they just cut away but I also think, get this fucking guy off the screen. You know, probably somebody in production is just like, why the fuck cut away? Okay, thank you. Weather report, you know? So he comes home and he's like, all like, oh, I took care of it. Don't worry about it, guys. And they're like, actually, you definitely did not because they cut you off. So he then says, okay, maybe we do have to kill Joanna Robinson. Is it Robinson? I got that wrong too, because that's Colin Robinson. Who the fuck knows? Joanna. And Laszlo convinces him, no, we are changing our plan over to kidnapping. So Nandor gets on board with this, even though, like I said, there's no step 2. And so when Guillermo finally gets through and Laszlo picks up, first of all, even though all Nandor's been doing is like, where's Guillermo? When Laszlo gets on the phone with him, he doesn't tell Nandor that's who he's speaking to, and he doesn't accept any advice or want to hear a word out of the kid's mouth. He is basically like, the fuck are you telling me what to do? You're not my boss. We've got this handled. Nobody asked you. Go fucking away. And as he's like telling him this, Nandor has come up with a sack that he's like, this is the perfect size for us to grab Joanna. And Laszlo's like, the fuck it is? But we're going to fit Joanna's entire body in there. That's never going to fit her. And they have this like back and forth about it. Nandor keeps, yes, it will. Fine. Get in it. And, it doesn't even come up to his hips. And they're just like bickering. And so all that Guillermo can hear on the phone is that they are planning on, at the very least, kidnapping her. And I'm sure he is assuming that they would go on to murder her. And he wants to leave. He's freaking out. And this is part of why he like doubles down on paying attention. But it's just too late, dude. Like, they don't want your help. You have got to get out of this toxicity here. And then he brings out another bag and it's like transparent so they'd be able to see that she's in there, which, extra funny. I love to, at one point when Nadja comes downstairs, it turns out that she has also dyed her Dolly's hair blonde, so they still match, which is, I don't know, kind of adorable. And Nandor decides that he is going to get up on the stairs and give them all a pep talk in the style, I'm sure, of what he used to do when he said Nandor the Relentless. I love when he says his name, because she asks him in the interview in the cold open, and he says Nandor the Relentless, and she says Nandor de Laurentiis, and I was like, oh, actually? That's pretty good. He could, like, just start saying that, and it would still hit, you know? So, yeah, he's like, we have got to work together. We all have our part to play. And I love that he's like, okay, so let's get on with it. And Nadja says, yeah, this is all your fault, you know, like just reminding him. She should too, because he really did fuck up so bad. Two times, you know, and then he had to go back and correct it, but fucked that up. So, talking about history, and maybe one day you'll get to tell someone that what you did during the Great Vampire Battle instead of that you were shoveling shit in Louisiana. So this is when Guillermo comes home and he says, no need to worry because I have a plan. And I forgot that he sets off this trap. This one, because it's like just getting Colin Robinson, I wasn't really counting it, but he like hits a tripwire that trips the noose that like tightens around Colin's ankle and yanks him upside down into the air. But yeah, everybody, when he gets here, you know, like he hurried home from saying goodbye to his mother for the last time, tries to give Nadja a compliment about her hair. She utterly ignores him. And everyone else is just like, you have your life and we have ours. We can quite easily survive without you. And he looks so hurt and is like, okay, then, well, fine. I guess you guys have it all under control. And I really like, again, the hurt look, I can't be sorry for him because you have family, actual family, and you just want these weirdos to approve of you so bad. And this is when he starts to go down one of the hallways, and Colin says, I wouldn't go that way if I were you. Have you ever heard of a bouncing Betty, a Shrapnelman in the authentic German? And he very, very slowly backs away, but he winds up going into the living room, and he's able to like go in there and watch TV and chill with his little plate. Cause of course there is no way that they are sending him home without a plate. So he's got all these leftovers and stuff since he fucking didn't pay attention at dinner. They still gave him tamales to take home. Makes me want tamales, kids. Real bad. But he's watching here, and she is standing there happily reporting the happy ending. The water main's been sealed. The leaks underground have been brought under control. And as she's standing there, this weird looking car comes up behind her, and we see both Guillermo and Laszlo sneaking up. Guillermo with this fucking like this expression on his, I can't describe it, just like the most shit-eating grin of like a little kid who's about to steal like a piece of cake. And he's got the sack and he's got it hanging open as he comes up behind her. Truly, the fact that her cameraman hasn't said anything to her, I would kill him if I were her. I would be like, what the fuck? I'm sure actually she's like, good, I need you to keep rolling. I would want to catch that, you know, like, but they come up right behind her just as they begin to notice that their car, which they thought was in park, is rolling backward into the sinkhole, and it disappears in a little like puff of dirt. They run up to it and they just jump into the hole with it. So now she's like, the woman, Joanna is like, well, now we've got a new situation like that's happening with, some more violence and the car and the destruction. And then they catch sight of Colin Robinson, who has run up to the news van And she says he's throwing fire in the van, but he walks away and that bitch explodes. It was a stick of dynamite. Like, that shit is... her screen goes like in the color bars for a second, and they're just like, we've lost our Staten Island feed. We're working with our team to make sure everything is okay. And it turns out this is all happening in like Sean's front yard. So he steps outside at this point, drinking a beer, and just chucks some of the beer onto the truck that's like on his van that's on fire to try and like put it out. That's his like effort at firefighting. Meanwhile, our gang is literally flying into the air to get the car out of the hole in the ground. And she is naturally freaking out, like, did you get this, that these people are flying? Until finally Evil Mabel says, I think Joanna caught us flying on tape, just FYI. So of course they try to go running after the news van. They've already taken off, so they're like, all right, well, no time to lose. They four turn into Evil Mabel. They turn into bats and just leave Colin Robinson, which, fair. And then we go to the actual office. And you guys, this is the weirdest shit. This really reminded me of Sookie Stackhouse. I don't want to say because of spoilers. If you haven't watched True Blood, it doesn't happen in like the Sookie Stackhouse novels. But the True Blood show, there is a point where a vampire goes on TV and kills an anchor in a very memorable fashion. And it's truly like one of the highest points of the show. But at this point, Nandor comes in, he mesmerizes all of the two anchors, and we find out the weatherman. And then they get on camera and tell everyone that they have forgotten what they have seen. Apparently this shit works on camera, which is totally fine, sure. And then, instead of just taking off, they realize, like, oh, it's going to look really suspicious if there's just empty seats here to the people who just joined us. So they decide to like read the teleprompter and just do their jobs and try and be as like normal as they can. So they manage to like mostly pull this off right until they go to the weather. Colin Robinson, who, by the way, what a peppy weatherman. They show scenes from the puppy parade, and kiddos, I need a local puppy parade immediately. What the fuck? But when we go to Colin Robinson, he's wearing like some tactical vest that like blends in with the background. And we've got Evil Mabel, who's like drinking the blood of one of the anchors, I think the weather woman, and drags her off. But there's still this huge splash of blood on the screen back there. And he's just trying to play it off like we didn't just see that woman get dragged off. I don't know how how they're intending to explain any of this, because the people who just joined have to have seen this. So I guess we're just meant to believe that nobody thinks anything is out of the ordinary here. But anyway, he gives a great report for weather for the pup parade. And then they move over to Laszlo Cravensworth, who gives some info on the football game against the Cowboys, which actually, considering his background with like the volleyball team, I'm willing to believe he probably is the best person to talk about what's going on in sports. Like, he might actually have his finger a little bit on the sports pulse in general, but otherwise, like, it doesn't really matter because he is reading off a teleprompter too, so that's fine. I'm curious, and I don't want to look it up because I'm afraid I will like accidentally spoil myself on something unrelated, because that happens. But are the anchors and like this particular channel and everything, are these actual local Staten Island news anchors? Like, do they get guest stars for this? And I'm just not picking up on exactly who they are because I don't recognize them? Or is this just like a completely made up thing? Because it would be kind of fun if they had the actual cast, you know, if they had the 2 anchors and whatnot participating in this, it would be really fun. So yeah, this is the point at which Guillermo is talking to the camera, and he's, I think, heading down to bed, and he just like, there's like a blowtorch behind him and a couple of blow darts cross his path, and then a chandelier that falls. There's a huge pendulum like blade and something that just pushes him from one wall into another. And I think like a rain of gunfire, an axe that comes flying at him, spikes come up from the ground, and then there's a guillotine that drops. And he just looks at the camera and is like, what the fuck is happening? And that is how the episode ends. So, Ms. T says, I guess nothing out of the ordinary for Staten Island. Oh my God. I really like that explanation, Ms. T. That never even occurred to me, but I love that. The implication that like, oh yeah, they're dragging a bloody body off the soundstage. Whatever. Staten Island. Am I right? Like, I like that explanation a lot. But yeah, so I really liked this episode. It was like difficult because of the whole Guillermo thing. Cause you know, I dealt with that plot line first. And as I'm like going through the episode to each section of his plot in order to cover it, I realized actually his shit takes up more of the episode, I think, than the vampires. If not, it was at least even. But I was thinking that his was sort of like the little side thing, and really their setup is brief, and then we go to him for more extended periods. So yeah, it was just like so uncomfortable, and I'm just mad at him. It just, in general, I just am frustrated with Guillermo, you know, and that's the point. So I guess they're doing their job. All right, I'm going to wrap this one up. Thank you guys so much again for listening. Appreciate you all. And until next time, toodaloo, motherfuckers.
That was an Unspoiled Network podcast.